Variety had this article, How Millennials' Y2K Nostalgia is Fueling This New Round of TV Revivals, including Scrubs, Buffy, and Malcolm in the Middle. And I think this article is a good starting point for this conversation, so I will include it linked below in the description box if you want to check it out. I think it's absurd that any of these shows are coming back next year, to be honest. All these shows ended a long time ago and their stories were told in a satisfactory manner. First up, Malcolm in the Middle, a comedy show I never really warmed to, I must admit. It's about a dysfunctional family. It's kind of like a live-action version of The Simpsons or Family Guy. I thought it had some funny moments in there. I wasn't a big fan of the show overall. I did find it a little bit overrated, but what do I know? I mean, this was a very popular show, and my opinion is very much the minority. It ran from 2000 to 2006. The young actors have all grown up, so I think the whole basis of the show is gone. It feels kind of redundant at this stage. What's the point of bringing back this show 20 years later? Well, nostalgia. That's the point. Capitalizing on millennial fondness for old shows that people used to love. This is why the term member berries has stuck in popular culture. Now, before I go very much further with this video, please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell to be notified of future updates, hit that like button, and also, if you can, follow the link in the description box to my other channel, Computing Forever, which I'm also making new content on, so subscribe over there. That's Computing Forever. Scrubs was another comedy show which ran from 2001 to 2010. It actually ended after its 8th season, but got dragged back for a 9th, which was actually okay, but undervalued the strong finale of Season 8. Season 9 also retooled the series with new cast members and a new direction. I actually did like Scrubs, I have to admit. It could be very funny at times. It was a wacky comedy in a hospital setting, and I think it worked quite well. But I have to say, it's not a show I would watch now. There's just some shows that you grow out of over the years, and you wouldn't really look at again. You know what I mean? And I think Buffy is one of those shows as well. Some shows mark certain points in your life. You watched them back then, but you wouldn't watch them now. And I watched Buffy as a teenager / young adult, and it ran from 1997 to 2004. And it was a very special show. It was very clever. The characters were compelling and believable. And the pathos, the teen angst, it was brilliantly written. There were some great stories in there. But it was mostly teen-focused. So I personally have no interest in sitting and watching more of this. I did prefer the spin-off show Angel, which ran for 5 seasons, and I think overall was more consistent than Buffy in terms of quality, and the themes of the show were a bit more grown up. But Buffy was the iconic and more revered series of the two, and it was Joss Whedon's passion project. Incidentally, he's not going to be involved in this Buffy revival. A pilot episode is going to air on Hulu next year with a view towards a new series. Sarah Michelle Gellar is back as Buffy Summers, but it's mostly going to focus on a new young cast and a brand new Slayer. Buffy did have a very decent series finale in the episode Chosen. It was continued with some comic books that I never read, but the show had explored the universal themes of growing up and coming of age, and it did it very well, and I think it did what it set out to do. The character arcs had been paid off, the story of the Slayer had been told. TV reboots and remakes are nothing new, of course, but in recent years it does seem that there's been an increased appeal to the millennial audience, which is why we're seeing so many TV shows and reunions from, about 20 years ago coming back. And we saw this as well with even in films like Deadpool and Wolverine, where they had various cameos from early 2000s superheroes. And of course, Avengers Doomsday is going to bring back the X-Men cast from the original film trilogy from the early 2000s. I think it goes without saying that all this nostalgia probably goes to show that Hollywood is seriously lacking in originality, as if we needed to be reminded of that. We've talked about that. There is money in nostalgia. There's money in connecting adult audiences with their childhood and young adulthood. People will tune in just for the novelty of seeing something from their past return in an updated form. It's all about capitalizing on misty-eyed, sentimental feelings, capturing a romanticized memory of the past, and making a certain demographic feel wistful. Now, there is likely a major contributing factor as to why shows like these are being resurrected, and that is the impact of streaming. These shows are available on streaming services, and millennials are binge-watching them again. And I'm sure new younger audiences are discovering them for the first time also. But the popularity of these shows right now on streaming is likely the reason why studios are comfortable with bringing them back. Because they're confident, they know that they have an existing audience. But could this renewed recent interest in these shows on streaming be a sign that some audiences are dissatisfied with new modern TV and are happy to lose themselves in older shows that they consider to be better than a lot of modern shows? There's definitely something comforting in nostalgia. One of the reasons I'm against these kinds of reunions is that they don't feel like natural progressions of the original shows. When a show is over and it's had its day, the central story is finished and the characters have gone through their journeys and completed their development in a satisfying conclusion. Bringing the show back just feels like trying to reheat leftovers. I find it eye-rolling that they're bringing back these 3 shows. At best, it feels like a total lack of imagination, a failure to come up with something new. At worst, it feels like a cynical attempt to cash in on the past popularity of shows that have had their day. If these reunions turn out to be bad or disappointing, they just sully the legacy of the original shows to a degree. And also, sometimes you just can't always rekindle the magic that a show once had in its heyday. I think it's preferable to leave well enough alone and just remember the show at its best, in its prime, when it was at its creative peak, rather than taking the risk that you bring the show back only to discover that maybe the magic just isn't there anymore. But hey, there's clearly a healthy fan base for these shows still after all these years. There's going to be people who will be curious to see how these reunions turn out, and so they're going to show up for them. Let's see. To me, these reunions just show us that Hollywood has become increasingly risk-averse, deciding to greenlight reunion shows rather than entirely new original ones. So, Malcolm in the Middle, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Scrubs. Are you interested in seeing the return of any of these shows in 2026? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channels. Take care. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.